Welcome to my Shockwave Cyclone lead start guide. So Cyclone in 3.25 will get a pretty huge damage effectiveness buff, going from 59% to 111. Now, the added physical damage on the gem will be removed, but it was only roughly 30. And Shockwave will also get a buff, going from 260 DPS effectiveness to 336. And we are also going to be using stars, and stars will receive a crit chance buff. Now, it's not going to be meta, but I think it's a pretty decent build now. I've done a Exarch Ether run in the 3.24 patch, and it can get to 2 Void Stones in 11 hours. It took me 10 hours and 40 minutes, I think. So you can push this day 1 to red maps, to higher tier red maps, and endurance charges are going to be buffed. You use the Smashing Strike notable, which gives you endurance charges on melee crit. So overall, this build is going to be offensively and defensively much stronger. I've basically prepared 3 different POBs, one with a leveling tree and in like 12 level steps that you can follow, and a early game POB, which is supposed to be a day 1 POB. So a weapon like this I would get, so you will hope for a open prefix. So you would get this from Betrayal. What you want to do is day 1 you want to spec Betrayal nodes, the Betrayal nodes at the start of the Atlas tree, which will give you roughly 40% chance to have a Betrayal encounter. And the problem with physical weapons is, or getting high physical damage DPS weapons, is that the weighting of the increased physical damage mod is pretty low, and the mod pool of the weapons is pretty high. So a good way of getting decent for the early game weapons is to use Betrayal to unveil physical damage. Ideally, the mod with the chance to impale enemies on hit, and if you're lucky, it has another good mod and the open prefix, and you can craft your added physical damage. Or if it already has added physical damage, maybe you're lucky it has an open suffix, you can craft attack speed. So then you want in Abysses. Abysses is a tier 3 unique, so it's not super common, but it's also not super rare. And you would ideally take this once you have enough armor and endurance charges. If you don't, then you want to use another helmet, because this helmet has the mod increased physical damage taken. So for your chest, day 1, so generally speaking, I've added notes to these items, so you know how to craft these items. So armor bases are going to be buffed, so you want to use something like a Glorious Plate, and right now it has 2580 armor, but POB hasn't been updated with the new bases, so this is probably going to be much higher, and you might even be able to drop the determination. For your gloves, you want pretty much the attack speed roll and the accuracy rating. Attack speed you can force with an Seal Essence, and you want to look for accuracy rating. And if you're very lucky, you also get a life roll, and then you could craft increased damage with increased damage while leeching, which is a sort of Betrayal signature mod from Vorici. And that's also one of the reasons why you want to do Betrayals, to get certain signature mods. Like for example, Vorici gives you the increased damage while leeching. Arion gives you the channeling, non-channeling skills have minus to total mana cost. This mod is pretty important because we want to reduce our Cyclone mana cost to 0 or 1, or in this case you want it to be 0. If you don't do that, you have to use life tap support. And generally speaking, the mods that you want on your gear is increased damage while leeching, which is a prefix. You can craft this on your gloves, you can craft it also on your amulets. You want accuracy rating suffixes which can go on your jewelry, your helmet, or your gloves. Obviously you want a high physical DPS staff, ideally from Betrayal, or you could just buy it. You look for something like plus 400 DPS, I would say. If you still don't have enough accuracy from your gear, you would want a arrogance and precision setup. Now as a 5th link, a 5 link is probably gonna cost you 2 Chaos Orbs on day 1, and you will want to use ideally melee physical. They've actually nerfed infused channeling, so I have to remove this line here. And For defense, you want endurance charges, because endurance charges will give you elemental reduction in 3.25, and we do have endurance charge generation with the smashing strikes, and with how fast Cyclone attacks, you should be able to maintain these endurance charges. And this you also get physical damage reduction with endurance charges, and it will be additive with the physical damage reduction that you get from your armor. So endurance charges are very, very strong right now. And so you want endurance charge, you also want max resistance masteries, which you can pick. I have it here. If you have life reserved, you get max res. You can click these nodes. Later on you can also click this. To increase your armor, you can click this mastery. 10% increased armor per red socket on main hand weapon. And then you also get the staff mastery, which makes it so increased damage, increased defenses while wielding a staff. And you could also buy a energized armor. And what this one does is transform these energy shield modifiers into armor modifiers. So in this case we can get, so how much armor is this? It's 2.5k armor per point here, and we'll be up to 34,000 armor from 20k, 22k. So this would be a pretty good jewel that you could get. Other than that, what's important for your jewelry is that you have an open prefix, so you can craft the Elrion mod. Channeling skills have free to total mana cost, so this one's pretty important. These mods are essential basically. And Belt of Deceiver is a very common unique. It is quite strong. Then somewhat important is the Specialist Diamond Flask, which is basically we use a Diamond Flask because Diamond Flask only consumes 20 charges per use, and then we get the prefix chance to gain a flask charge when you deal a critical strike. So we have flask charge sustain even against bosses, for example. So the early game is day 1, I expect, or maybe day 2 if you don't play that much. Mid game, you're gonna use Contempt Essences, and you look for a tier 5 or higher increased physical damage mod with an open suffix. And this is gonna take you roughly 28 contempts. If it has an open suffix, you craft increased attack speed. Obviously you get the Abysses. Then the chest. We want a high armor based chest, and you also want the additional physical damage reduction mod, because this physical damage reduction, as I said previously, is additive with the physical damage reduction you get from armor. And you want a improvement over your last gauntlet. So higher attack speed, higher accuracy rating. So as your implicits, you want the chance to intimidate. Later on you can also get a lethal pride with chance to intimidate. And impale is also fine. Then you want, of course, an upgrade. This is all pretty straightforward. This is just higher resistances over the last POB. And you also want a Rislava's Coil for the more maximum physical attack damage modifier. Now this line, the 48% more maximum physical damage, is multiplicative with volatility. So volatility becomes a very strong support gem for this build with Rislava's Coil, but also your lower end of your physical damage becomes kind of low, but your average damage will go up by a lot, and it's a lot stronger than infused channeling. But infused channeling would actually make you a little bit tankier. So this is really up to you what you want to use. I think volatility is pretty good. Then the end game POB, or week 1 if you play a lot. So basically 3 is pretty similar. What you can do is a mace and staff large cluster, but this one will be very difficult to roll. And you want to get the Overlord, notable. So you don't have to use this Fortify Mastery, which gives you maximum fortification, minus maximum fortification, and you will also save 1 point. So this would be good. And you want like nodes like these, Feed the Fury, which is really good for Slayer because we are always leeching. So these two conditions, like increased damage and increased attack speed, are always fulfilled, or not always, as long as you have attacked recently. You want a Watcher's Eye, ideally the one with chance to deal double damage while using Prides, and get a Charisma Anointment, so you can use Herald of Purity, Blood and Sand, and these 3 auras. You also want Enlighten. So if you don't have Enlighten, if you don't have Charisma, you probably throw out Herald of Purity. Have notes here too. For your rod, you basically want to use Contempt Essences until you get the Hybrid mod, a high tier Hybrid mod. So tier 4 is probably fine already. And then you need Open Prefix. And if you don't have an Open Prefix, you want to annul the prefix that is useless for you. Afterwards, you craft prefixes cannot be changed. You use a Veiled Orb, and hopefully you get a prefix unveil. And when you unveil, you want to look for increased physical damage, and Chance Veil would be the best mod. But if you get unlucky, you just go for any increased physical damage prefix. Then you craft prefix cannot be changed, wipe the suffixes, and multi-mod, craft increased attack speed and increased critical strike chance. Yeah, your chest you get with a Dense Fossils. Dense Fossils are your best bet for getting triple increased armor, flat armor values. And ideally you also get the additional physical damage reduction mod. The Gauntlet, you want to use Seal Essences. You go for a good accuracy rating roll, and then another good lightning ingress roll. Then I've written this all down. You protect the suffixes, make sure you have an open prefix for that, and you craft Reforge Life with Harvest. Hopefully there's an open prefix. If there's an open prefix, you craft increased damage while leeching. If it doesn't have an open prefix, you have the Eldritch Orb of Annulment, and hopefully when you Eldritch Orb of Annulment the gloves, it doesn't hit your Reforge, your life roll. Otherwise you have to go back to the step where you go suffixes cannot be changed and Reforge life. Alright, Amulet, I use Scorn Essences. You probably buy something like this and it should be some reasonably cheap. Your rings, if you have 2 resistance rolls and an open suffix, what you want to do is suffixes cannot be changed. With Harvest, then you craft, you do Reforge Chaos. Then you want to protect the suffixes again. You use a Veiled Orb. You block mana, unveil life. It should be, I think, guaranteed actually. You craft channeling skills have -3 total mana cost. If it still has an open prefix, you can use a Warlord, Conqueror's Orb, and maybe it hits increased melee damage, increased armor. That would be pretty ideal. Yeah, Amulet, spam Scorn Essences, and that's pretty much the end game PUB.